Good morning, welcome to CATEX-TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Wednesday, October 6, 2010. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the U.S. It's 4:30 p.m. in London. In Mexico City, it's 10:30 a.m. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free in the U.S. to 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our AOL Instant Mail address is CATEX-TV. On this date 29 years ago, in 1981, Egyptian President Anwar el-Sadat was assassinated while reviewing a military parade. It was probably the first noticeable outbreak in the modern era of Islamic terrorism. In some breaking news, we reported about 3 weeks ago on the anti-piracy navy that's being proposed by London broker JLT. While they have a recruit, Lloyd's insurer Ascot Underwriting is working with JLT on the plan for the private navy to protect ships against Somali pirates. The £10 million JLT proposal would create a fleet of about 20 armed boats to protect ships from pirates. Ascot has proposed to underwrite the shipping, escorted by the JLT private navy. Ascot's underwriter for Marine Hull, Andrew Moulton, said, "We've been working with JLT to provide a framework of insurance coverages." A spokesman for JLT said the proposal still needed government approval. Well, to our other news, the situation in Hungary is becoming increasingly worse. This is the rolling sludge filled with heavy metal contaminants. About 120 people have been suffering now from chemical burns. 4 people have been killed. Pets, household domesticated animals of all kinds are just dying by the dozens. The ecological catastrophe is now threatening the Danube River and has gained the attention of the European Union. The EU announced this morning that they are concerned about the toxic red sludge that has burst from the plant reservoir. We'll have more on that in a second. The global property and casualty market is apparently set to sidestep the multi-million-dollar cleanup and liability costs. This is according to Inside Fact magazine. Allianz is the insurer for the owner of the aluminum plant in Hungary that's responsible for the environmental disaster. The EU spokesman said that they stand ready to help if the disaster took on larger proportions or Budapest requests assistance. The Danube, of course, flows through Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Moldova before entering the Black Sea. That's downstream from Hungary. So there is potential for a wider environmental impact. The gigantic sludge reservoir burst its banks Monday at an aluminum plant in the town of Ajka, A-J-K-A, about 100 miles southwest of Budapest. The torrent inundated homes, swept cars off roads, knocked off bridges, disgorged about 35 million cubic feet of toxic waste onto several towns. Emergency workers wearing hazmat suits are patrolling the towns, as are soldiers. The plant owner, well, a little bit word about the sludge. The sludge is a byproduct of the refining of bauxite into aluminum. It contains heavy metals and is toxic if it's ingested. Treated sludge is often stored in ponds where the water eventually evaporates and leaves behind a dry, clay-like soil. The plant, the Hungarian Aluminum Production and Trade Company that is located at Ajka, that was the scene of the accident, has insisted that the red sludge is not considered hazardous waste according to EU standards. The company has also rejected criticism that it should have taken more precautions to shore up the reservoir, which was a huge structure, about 325 yards long and 500 yards wide. So there's going to be quite a bit on that. The International Monetary Fund is making some news. They are saying that the global economy will continue to grow this year, actually next year in 2011, but slower than they had expected. The IMF said that global domestic production would increase by 4.2% next year. This is down from 4.3% that they had predicted earlier. And they warned that there will be a fairly substantial split between the so-called developed countries and the so-called undeveloped countries. The advanced economies, including the U.S., Britain, Japan, and several key EU nations, will still be quite vulnerable to shocks. because the financial sector is still very weak, they say. This would lead to a growth of 2.8% this year and 2.2% next year. This is down from an earlier production of 2.4% estimate. However, the developing countries, such as Brazil, Russia, India, and China, will come in next year at 6.4%. That's the same prediction that they've had for a while, and they're expecting that by the end of this year, 2010's number will show growth of 7.1% in those countries. Well, our friends at Insurance Day are hosting their annual Technology Day Forum in London today, and as usual, there's some news that's coming out of there. The chairman of the London Market Group, Barnabas Hurst-Bannister, in a speech this morning said that London's developing relationship with exchanging has been cited as the central reason for the market's slow progress in e-accounting and delays in the latest version of the electronic claims file. Developing relationship with exchanging. They've been working with exchanging for 12 years. Mr. Hurst-Bannister told the audience that the relationship between the market and exchanging is not as functional as it needs to be. According to Mr. Hurst-Bannister, a first release of the London Market's e-accounts program should already have been up and running by now. Instead, he said, the London Market Group anticipated being on the verge of implementing the second part of this, which is the introduction of a service run by exchanging that produces splits on behalf of the insurer at some point later this year. He does not think that this time frame will be met because of workflow aspects that are still being rolled out. Mr. Hurst-Bannister said, I would put the protracted timescales down to the continuing development of our relationship with exchanging. The relationship between a market of 250 competitive firms seeking to speak with one voice and a service provider that is part outsourcer, part software development house, and part market scapegoat is still not as functional as I believe it needs to be. Bannister went on to say, we, as a sure-footed market, now represent consistent and comprehensive client response that exchanging has dared us to be. We now need to see exchanging assume that role as a vendor. He also had some general comments about the opportunity that has been missed by the London market to shore up their investment in technology. He said, since the middle of the last decade, we've invested only a fraction of 1% of 1 year's income in the central projects aimed at ensuring our competitiveness in technology. He said, new centers, new capital, new preferences, the New York Insurance Exchange, all have the potential to seriously erode our business if we do not continue to provide world-class client service and technology. That's a couple of very, very good thoughts from Mr. Hurst-Bannister. Our friend John Kavoures has been appointed by Aspen as co-chief executive of its primary insurance business. He's going to be working alongside Rupert Villers. The appointment takes place with an immediate effect. It'll see John take a particular focus on Aspen Insurance global casualty and professional lines of business. Villers will focus on global transport-related lines such as marine, energy, and aviation, as well as financial. Kavoures will be based in the U.S. Villers is based in the UK. Some news from Alley Street in London. Broking group Arthur J. Gallagher's UK division made a pre-tax profit of £8.4 million in 2009, a 90% increase over what it made in 2008. The Insurance Times apparently got a look at the latest company accounts, and they show a turnaround in operating profit of an £8.3 million profit in 2009 from a £6.6 million loss in 2008. That's a pretty big turnaround. The broker's turnover for continuing operations increased from £48.8 million up to about £54 million, helped by a strong performance in its North American and global operations. Revenues from UK business remained mainly flat. There was a little bit of a headcount reduction. They went from 364 to 320. The company also, in March of this year, announced that it had purchased Lloyd's broker First City, and then in June announced that it had purchased Lloyd's broker Risk and Reward Group. Well, Jerome Kerviel is in the news. This will be the last story we have about him, I promise. He was interviewed today for the first time since his sentencing yesterday. He told Europe One Radio, "I have the feeling like they want to make me pay for it all." He said he feels crushed by the weight of his punishment. This is despite the fact that he was responsible for a $6.8 billion U.S. trading loss. He's only been ordered to spend 3 years in jail. But he has been ordered to pay back the trading loss. I don't know where he's going to find the $6.8 billion. The judge yesterday said that he was solely responsible for the loss and that he was guilty on 3 counts. Crevel said he's going to continue working as a computer consultant. That'll help him put a dent in that bill that he owes. Good luck with that. The stock market in New York is up about 19 points right now. We'll go to a word from our sponsors.
Design for peace.
Well, you can imagine the reaction at 10 Downing Street when this news was received. See if you can follow this. A French terrorism alert about England has added to Western security concerns today. Suspected al-Qaeda militants also in Yemen attacked a senior British diplomat's car. Nobody was killed in that. A Frenchman in Yemen was killed at a oil and gas installation. But the big news is that France issued a security alert telling its citizens that are heading to England to exercise caution due to a very high likelihood of a terrorist action there that could target public transport and tourist sites. The British are sort of scratching their head, although they did raise their threat level to high from general for its own citizens traveling to France. The only people who seem to be relatively calm about this are the Germans. The interior minister there said he sees no indications of any imminent attack on Germany, although the country remains a target in general. Security sources all over are saying that warnings are coming about a possible al-Qaeda type plot to launch attacks on European cities modeled on the 2008 Mumbai attacks that killed about 170 people. And yesterday, an American drone attack in the hills of North Waziristan unleashed 2 missiles that killed 8 militants who were German citizens. The Germans are saying that we have their identity cards. We don't know if they're part of the plot, but we're continuing to examine it. So more consternation in Europe. In Hanoi,